Elizabeth Porter. After 20 years working as a lawyer with families, abuse, and mental health, I'm done ignoring the patterns. It's time for hard conversations that build awareness, create compassion, and change lives. Welcome to Law and Porter.
He left, went to the house, called me from the landline, and he said, "Tell the kids I love them and I'll always love them. And I'm sorry, Rachel, I'm gone." He said, I got pulled over by somebody, flashing their lights at me. Finally, I pulled over, and he said it was Reverend Thompson. He said, "All right now, what's going on in your life? The Lord done pulled me up out of my recliner. Come and tell me to find you." He said, something's going to happen in your life. He said, "You need to get right. And I told them that their father had passed in a car accident. And my son looked at me. He said, "He's not sick anymore, is he, Mama?" I said, "No, he's not sick anymore."
All right. Well, hey, Rachel.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me this afternoon. I am thrilled that you're going to tell your story, not just because, actually because I didn't have to force you to. Some people I just have to hold them down in the chair and make them tell me. But this is something you've mentioned that you're ready to talk about. And so as long as I've known you, which has been about 10 years, which is crazy to say, you have been a single mom, independent, the most caring, kind, and nurturing person. But you were not always Miss Independent. And, well, you probably were Miss Independent. But there was, once upon a time, a husband and a family. And take me back to that time. How old were you? And then what was married life like?
Well, I was 28 when I met Matthew. And it was actually that same year that I met him, and he proposed to me, and we were all married in that same year. Okay. And I was excited. I was I was excited at the fact of being married, starting that life. Everybody else had begun that life, and finally I was. And he was a sweet, caring, just a kind-hearted soul. And I was excited that I was going to get to start that journey myself.
Wear the white dress, plan the wedding, have the showers.
Yeah. I was going to get to do what everybody else did.
Well, so the early years of being married, were y'all good friends? Like, tell me what that relationship dynamic was like.
Well, at the beginning, when I first met him, I had just gotten out of a relationship with somebody else, and I was pretty heartbroken by that. That had ended, and I remember telling a friend of mine that when I was going through education courses for my degree, and I said, "Is there anybody I can date? Does anybody know of anybody?" And she's like, "I know somebody." I'm like, "Okay." And so, we met, and I thought, this is the sweetest guy I've ever met. He was kind. He always joked I didn't want somebody that's going to wake me up at 5:30 in the morning to go running. He was not going to make me do that. So we enjoyed a lot of the same things. He was very successful in what he was doing. He had a little car lot, had a great family that his mother taught with my mom, and he was building a home. And, I thought at that point, life was starting. This is where I'm supposed to be. And I felt very secure at that moment. Even I was told, "You'll never have to worry. He's always going to take care of you." And I trusted that. I believed it, So.
And how long did those good years last? Months. How long did those good days last?
Well, we were married in December of 2002. And then I had a son born in September of 2003. So it was right after that. We didn't have a whole lot of time to ourselves, by ourselves. We were excited about finishing his house that he was building. I made a nursery in there because it wasn't long after we were married. Doctor always said, be careful. You know, y'all have a football team. You know, it was very fast. But we just enjoyed ourselves. We had great vacations for that little short amount of time. And then I still thought I was good. I got to stay out of teaching for a year once I found out I was pregnant. So I got to stay home with my first child for the whole year. But it wasn't until he was right after his 4-month checkup. That was when things I realized weren't going to be okay, or they weren't as picture perfect as I had thought that they were at that moment.
So when your son was 4 months old?
Mm-hmm.
And what was the first inkling that something might be off?
Well, I got a call from his mother, my husband's mother, and said that our house payment hadn't been paid in about 4 months. And I was like, what? Oh, are you serious? It threw me. I thought, that's not right. You know, how I didn't know that. I thought we were paying bills. I thought, I thought all was well. But yeah, 4 months, he had not been paying bills. I got to thinking about things, and I knew our marriage was not how other marriages were. I will tell you, he did not sleep in the bed. He was one that he didn't want to keep me up with his snoring or something like that. So a lot of times he slept in the chair. And this is stuff that I thought about. I just trusted, okay.
You can't say, let me compare it to all my prior marriages.
Right.
You just...
he's being kind, he's letting me sleep. I'm going to have a baby, or I had a baby, and so I was kind of embarrassed to tell people, this is how we're living, and I don't feel it's normal. It's not what I had lived with in my home growing up, but I didn't tell a whole lot of people until I really got to thinking about what could be the reason that he's not paying our house note. Where is money going? And then I thought, who am I to ask also, because I'm not working? So a lot of that I didn't know what to do with, and I cried a lot. I worried, and I was not at home at the time that she had called me. I was actually at my sister's house. And so when I did confront him, he never had a real clear answer. It was, I was trying to make it almost to the point of where it was trying to make me feel guilty. That I was trying to hold this together, Rachel. I was trying to keep all this. I didn't want you to know about this. And I was like, oh, okay. And I don't know, things didn't seem right. And there were other things that happened because something led me to the point that I was like, this is not going to work. I was hurt. I felt betrayed. And I actually left. And it sounds so petty for me to feel like that's a reason to leave. But when I tell you that there were so many little things that happened, I don't remember them all. I've chunked them somewhere, but it was enough that my dad told me we can go and see a lawyer. And I did. I went and talked to my first lawyer. And I tried to explain things to him in a way that you're going to understand where I'm coming from. You're going to hear my hurt. You're going to understand my hurt. And that lawyer just didn't. Oh, Rachel, usually the third time you leave is the time that's real, that, you might want to try to go back, try to work on things. And I was like, and my dad was in there with me, and he's like, I don't think he understands. I'm like, I know he doesn't understand.
And those things are hard to convey. I mean, because what you're really saying is these little things have eroded my trust in the person I'm supposed to be sharing my life with. And so what did that second lawyer tell you?
Well, he kind of pulled a little bit more questions out. He asked me things like, well, what do you think Matthew's doing with that money? And that's what really got me to thinking. And I was so embarrassed to say, well, there were times that I would get up in the night to go find him, and he was in another bedroom of ours with the door shut that had a computer. And so I guess I was so naive. I felt I'm so dumb, I don't have any excuse as to thinking that was normal. It wasn't.
I think it's very normal. Doesn't make it right.
No, I don't know. But he was thinking, well, I think he felt like it was abandonment of responsibility. And, at that point, I had already talked to Matthew prior to even going and seeing this second lawyer. And that's when Matthew said, maybe I'd be a better father than a better husband. And I was like, oh, great. So you're telling me this is it. We're done. And you just want to be the dad and not the husband. Pretty much. That's what gave me the guns to keep going. And the hardest part, though, was I had a little baby whose grandparents and dad still wanted to see him. And that was my first baby. I did not want to give him up. I did not. And so I settled for Sunday afternoons. After church, we'd meet. He can take him over to his parents' house, and they can spend the afternoon. And then I'd get him back that evening. And during that time, after I had seen the second lawyer and things were starting to go, and I even believe I think my court appearance was in August of that year. And Britton, my son, was going to be a year old at the end of September. So we had a court date. And my heart sunk every Sunday. I had to let that baby go every Sunday. And it was to the point to where I couldn't even stand up straight. My stomach was in knots. Matthew was calling me names, saying how horrible I am, to not allow more time. And I was thinking, you did this to us. I didn't do this. You did this. So why should I suffer? And my stomach I was hurting so bad from the worry and the stress of going through this, and the guilt for my baby, that I couldn't even tote him upstairs at night. My mom had to tote my child. At this point, Matthew had cut off our insurance, had cut off everything. I didn't know that until Britton was sick one time. And I went to the doctor, and they're like, you don't have insurance. I'm like, oh, great. So now I'm dealing with this stomach issue. And I'm like, I'm scared they're going to tell me I have to have all kind of tests ran. I don't have insurance. But the whole time, it was my nerves. It had to have been. And then I got a call from Matthew. Said, can we talk? And I said, sure. So we went and we met and we talked, and he said all the right things. He said, I'm sorry I was trying to be somebody. I wanted to be more like his grandfather, who was successful in the business that he was in. I wanted to live like that. And I mean, he was one to buy jewelry. He was one to buy me jewelry, himself jewelry, probably a house that we couldn't afford. Just, he convinced me he was trying to be somebody that he wasn't, and that he was sorry. And naive me was like, well, how much do you need to pay off everything? I had money set back from a previous job that I'd had for 10 years. It was stocks. And I feel so silly. The right amount is what I had.
That is very coincidental.
And isn't it though? And I was like, well, will this pay off all that you have to pay off? Yes, it will, Rachel. It will pay it all off. Okay. And so we went to the place that I had the IRA or whatever it was and pulled out that money and paid off everything except for our home. But everything that was in his, I think it's called a floor plan or something with the bank for his car lot, that paid it all off, and we were good. And I found out later it was just a drop in the bucket to really what he owed. But my dad always said he was too quick to take your money. He was never, are you sure? You promise that you're okay with this? He said, Rachel, something's not right. He was too quick to say, okay, thank you. But I'm looking at, okay, I'm going to have my family back. I don't have to give up my child anymore. Please let me try to work this out. Let me get back together with him, and let's see if what you're saying is right. Let me see if that's if what you're saying is true. If he's genuine, or if he doesn't sound genuine, I've got to figure this out for my child's sake,
Well, I think it was not. He played into everything you hoped for. I mean, that's what you wanted.
He did.
He wasn't selling you anything you didn't want.
No, it is everything that I wanted. So I called that lawyer and I said, cancel that in August. We're going to try to work things out. And he's like, okay, great. Good. I'm glad for you.
Right.
And so I did go back.
All right. So you called it off. Mm-hmm. Y'all reconcile. Mm-hmm. And what happened after that?
Well, Britton's first birthday came. And on that day, I found out I was pregnant again. And I was excited. Everything seemed to be going very well. I felt like life was fine. We're good. I was excited. I didn't keep from having another child. I just didn't think one would come that quickly. And yeah, on his first birthday was when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. And it was remember, she had not had her first shots, and we were over at his parents' house. She was about 4 weeks old. He was acting erratic, like, let's go to the mountains tonight. Let's just go. Let's go to the mountains. I'm like, we can't go to the mountains. I have a 4-week-old baby. What are you talking about? And he's like, just come on, let's just go. We don't have to go out in public. Let's just go. And it was so odd for him. And it was at that moment, his brother came in the house and said, Matthew, come out here. He went out there, and I could hear them fussing out there. And his brother had found a bunch of alcohol that Matthew had. And I never knew of Matthew to be a drinker, but he was drinking alcohol. And at that moment, we found out that he had taken a lot of his mother's some type of drug that she had. I can't even remember what the names of them were. Maybe Clonopin, I can't remember. But those were missing. It was all in that span of that one moment that I realized what I had thought everything was great, everything was all right. My wheels start turning, and here I was thinking it may have been gambling. I didn't know what it was at that moment, but up until that moment. But then I realized it was drugs and alcohol that was taking his money. He got upset. I was upset. He left, went to the house, to our house, called me from the landline. And he said, tell the kids I love them and I'll always love them. And I'm sorry, Rachel, I'm gone. And I remember screaming on that phone, stop, don't go, wait, And he was actually driving down the driveway until he lost signal with the house, with our house phone. And I was like, oh my gosh, somebody go find him, go find him. And so brothers scattered, his dad scattered, they all went to go find him. And we got a call from one of his best friends that said, you need to come here, Matthew's here. And I went over there, I left my children with his mom. And it was there that we found out that Matthew had a problem. And he had actually, according to him, started his problem when I actually came home from the hospital with Britton, my son. He had given me Lortab for a C-section. And I went to the house and I realized that Lortab prescription was gone and the refill that was on it. So I think that was the start, was back when I first brought Britton home, and it never stopped. He was here. He was at his friend's house. We were all gathered around, and he admitted that he had a drug problem. And his dad took him the next morning to, I believe it was Laurel, to a detox. He admitted to doing drugs the whole time we got back together. The reason why we had no money at the beginning, I think now that I think about it, it wasn't until I went to my parents' house right after that I looked at our bank account and there was $600 taken out of it to an online RX. And he had taken so much money out of our account. And I never even checked it, Elizabeth. I didn't look at it. I just completely trusted him until I had reason not to. And that's when I start looking. And that's when I lost it. I was so upset. My parents just told me to sleep. There's nothing I could do without lack of rest. I slept for a day and a half. They watched my children. I did go and visit him at the detox. I brought my pastor with me at that point, and he claimed that during that time that Matthew accepted the Lord as his Savior, and I thought, okay, well, maybe this is it. Maybe this was enough, and I'll stay with him through this. And I'd asked him about the $600 that was out to that RX company. He claimed that we'd gotten it for a friend of his at work. At this point, he had lost his own business, and he was working for another dealership. He had bought it for that person, and that he was going to pay him back once the Lortab came in. I wanted to believe so badly. But I must have, because I stayed in it even longer. He was, I got a call from the, Parker, my daughter, was now about 6 weeks old. So I got a call from his boss there, that where he was working, that said we had just found Matthew passed out at the in his truck up here at the park in Prentice. And I'm like, he said, Rachel, we couldn't wake him up. And I realized that detox did nothing.
Yeah.
So we went to Pine Grove after that. His parents were so good to me. They still are. But their biggest concern, or one of their greatest concern, was not only Matthew, it was about the 2 grandchildren. They didn't want to lose that with them.
And isn't that, though, a part of what keeps you in a marriage with children? Like you said, when y'all reconciled that first time, you didn't have to face that fear of visitation, custody, a threat to your children's safety. You were willing to go through it.
I did.
If it meant that you were going to be with your kids and not have to let them go in a place you didn't think was safe.
I was going to endure to the very ends of what I could endure, just for that, just for to keep an eye on my kids, to try my best to keep a marriage, as failing as it seems. That's completely why I stayed. And my parents were like, Rachel, this is enough. This is enough. It's okay for you to leave. It's okay. And even his parents didn't blame me if I wanted to leave. They just wanted to know that they got to be a part of those children's lives. And of course, I wasn't going to ever take their children or their grandchildren away from them. But I believe other people have been told the same thing, and it did happen,
Did having your parents' permission, which I know you were an adult, but give you, was that like now I can move forward? Okay.
I felt like I was fighting two things. I was fighting my parents, and I was fighting for my marriage. My parents were telling me, this is enough. This is enough. It's okay. We'll help. We'll support you. We'll be there for you. And I was like, it doesn't feel right yet. It sounds crazy, but it does not feel right.
When you look back on that, what do you think was the right, I don't want to say advice, but I mean, and I know we theoretically, but what should they have said in that you needed back then during that time when you were already fighting your own battle?
They kind of separated themselves from Matthew, kind of put him in the no corner, I don't know if they really should have said anything different to me, or had been any way different, because I'm not saying that I wouldn't be the same way if this is to happen to my daughter one day. I wouldn't want her staying in something like that.
Right.
I wouldn't, it was heartbreaking for them to watch me struggle. And during that time, and I want to say, Katrina happened when Parker was 3 months old. So much happened during that time.
And because this may not be local, but Hurricane Katrina in 2005, and since we're about 90 miles north of the coast, that even where we are was really highly impacted in South Mississippi. So
it was.
How old was he?
My baby Parker was she was 3 months old when this happened.
Okay, I was thinking you said
so. I had 2 in diapers. I had a 1-year-old
during Katrina.
Yes, had a 1-year-old and a pretty much newborn 3-month-old, and Matthew had already been in one rehab time. It was a 30-day rehab. Um, and they sent him home on another drug, And I'm like, and I remember being in the meetings with them thinking, okay, he's in here for drug problems. We're going to send him home with another one. Can he do something with this? And they're like, oh, it's highly unlikely. Probably not. But yes, he did. He did. I'd see him passed out in his recliner, and I'd shake him, shake him to get him awake, and he couldn't wake up. And I was like, I feel so defeated. I feel so defeated. And it's some things are such a blur, but I do remember I had separated myself from him again, not going through any type of hadn't spoken to another lawyer, but I did separate myself again. And it was during that there were times that we would be driving and Matthew would have to shake his head to stay awake. And I was like, he is developing no inhibitions. This is horrible. I've got my children in the back seat. I'm sitting here and I'm hearing him shake his head, trying to stay awake while we're driving. And so I felt like for the safety of my children, we're going to go live with my parents for a little while. And that's when Hurricane Katrina came. Mm-hmm. And we were out of power and decided to leave. Well, my dad was like, he can go with us. And I thought, you want Matthew to go with us? He's like, yeah, because we went to Houston. That's where my dad was working. And so he went with us to Houston.
Was that shameful to, like, when you're in the marriage and you've forgiven someone so many times, did that almost keep you from mentioning anything being wrong again because you just feel stupid?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Do you start covering for him?
You do. You feel so stupid because you're telling them the same things that you're being told. And they're looking at you like, what? You're believing this? I wanted to.
Yeah.
I wanted to. There are so many times that I remember one time my best friend, she heard him give me an excuse as to why he got a new pair of tennis shoes. And he said, it's so funny. He said, somebody dropped their wallet outside the store. And I found him. And he's like, pick out any type of tennis shoes you want. I'll buy them for you. And she's like, Rachel, you believed that? And I'm like, should I not? I feel such an idiot to believe that was even a few years after this. So I went through this after Katrina. I found out that he had actually had a small accident in Houston and went to the hospital, and the hospital gave him more Loratab. And, we were refugees almost, that everybody gave. If you were from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, the coast, they gave you anything for free. Don't worry about it. This is on us. So he got he did all of this, going to the hospital, going to a pharmacy without me even knowing.
Well, and under your parents' noses too. Under your parents' noses too.
So, we're all very close.
Yeah.
He was just supposed to be going to AA meetings,
Yeah.
No, we're going to hospitals and getting prescriptions. And I was so angry when I found that out. I didn't find that out until actually after we had gotten home. We were there for 3 weeks. I didn't find out till a while that that's what he was doing there. And I remember being so angry with our government that people can go, doctor hopping and getting these drugs and destroying families. I thought there has got to be something that's federally or something somehow tracked of how much somebody is being prescribed. Because he would leave in the middle of church and be like, my back is killing me. I'm going to have to go to the doctor. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Your back hurts. you know, and he'd go and find another doctor to give him more medicine.
What was the final straw through all that?
It wasn't until probably he had lost so many jobs. It was job after job. We lost our home. I had to find us a place to live. It wasn't until I went to my mom after his last job failed. It was because he kept falling asleep at the keyboard. He had already been to an addictionologist and he was put on Suboxone. And I thought things were going to go better. We had been in and out of rehab. I don't even know how many times. It's such a blur in that amount of time. I'd gone through 6 months of marriage counseling after Katrina. We got back together after that 6 months of marriage counseling. I thought everything was going to go well. And it wasn't until I called my mom and I said, how can God allow so much to happen to me and my children? How can he allow this? I almost don't even believe anymore. I don't want to think that there is a God that says, it's okay, Rachel, just stay in it. Because I don't feel peace yet. I don't, for some reason, I go through all of this. I've been through this person with addiction. I've had to change my life. I'm not hanging out with my friends anymore. He can't keep a job. I don't know where I'm going to get our food from, pay our house note. Even though I had such great support, I didn't know why God kept me there and never given me peace to leave. And my mom said, I understand how you feel. I've been where you are under different circumstances, but I want you to lay prostrate on that floor. Lay prostrate on that floor, lay there and pray to God. And I did. As soon as I got off that phone, I laid there and I prayed and I cried and I screamed. I was so mad. But just watching my husband come to that door so early from work just to tell me he's lost another one. I cried and I cried. And I went to church that next Sunday. And there was an altar call hymn that was sang just about every Sunday. And the hymn was I Surrender All. I remember really listening to those words this time and not just saying them by rote memory, I surrender all. I surrender all. Yeah, I felt like I surrendered my marriage because I know I prayed to him about my marriage. I gave him at some point, Elizabeth, I wanted another child. I thought maybe another child would make me feel better. Maybe another home. He shut the door on that. Maybe something tangible that I could have that would make me feel better for that moment. And every time God said no. I had not given up my children to God. I never surrendered them. I always kept them close. I stayed in this marriage to keep them close. I stayed in whatever position I was in just to keep my kids right here. I never surrendered them until that moment when I sang I Surrender All and I went to the altar and I cried and I said, I've got to let him have my kids. I've got to let him take control of, that's what I'm holding on to. That's the last thing that I have to hold on to are my children. And I gave them up to God that moment. And that's when everything started turning. And in May of 2009, I felt final peace that this was it. I'd given everything. I can now promise my kids I suffered enough. I gave enough. I gave all that I had, and it's okay for us to go. I finally felt the peace and my parents were so hoping I would find to finally leave. And it was in May of 2009 that I said, I'm done. And it was when my dad came to me and told me one last lie that Matthew had said. And it was a lie about a job that he told me that so many crazy stories had happened there. And the whole time he was not even going to work. He was telling me he was going to work, but he was sitting in a parking lot all day long. And my dad found that out. And when he came to me, he said, Rachel, remember when he told you this? I said, yeah. He said, let me tell you what I found out. And then I found that out, and I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm done. And I left. And I felt such peace, and I knew God had me. God was going to take care of me, and he's going to take care of my children. Now he still had access to my kids, and I needed to go see a lawyer. I knew that, so that I could make sure that they stayed safe, because I had discovered he still had no inhibitions. And if I wasn't going to be in that car, I surrendered them. I had to remind myself I surrendered them. And so when I felt peace, I felt like God was saying, I'm going to take care of them too. I know what you're feeling. I know that this is your worry. This is your greatest worry. And I've got this too. So I did. I filed divorce. And it never happened though.
What happened?
In October of that same year, he called me on a Wednesday night. And he said, I'm so excited, Rachel. I'm so excited. I'm like, what? He said, I've got a new job opportunity. I said, you do? I said, that's great. He said, yes, I'm so excited. I'm going to be able to provide now for our family. And I don't think Matthew was ever wanting to be the way that he was. Like I said, he was such a kind soul. He had this monkey on his back he could not let go of. And that, it had such a great hold on him. And he hated the person that he became. And I told him, I said, well, that is wonderful, Matthew. I'm so excited. And then I remember 2 weeks prior to that, he had called me. He said, Rachel, you would never believe what happened to me today. This is 2 weeks prior to this phone call in October on Wednesday. So what happened? He said, I was driving home from work. He had this other little job. He said, I got pulled over by somebody, flashing their lights at me. And he said, so I pulled over. And he said it was Reverend Thompson. He said, came up and said, Matthew, is that you? He said, yes, sir. He said, all right now, what's going on in your life? The Lord done pull me up out of my recliner. Come and tell me to find you without something. What's going on in your life? He said, I don't know. I don't know. What do you mean? He's like, something's going on, Matthew. He said, something's going to happen in your life. He said, you need to get right. Get right. And I immediately, when he told me that, I was like, oh no. He said, I know what you're thinking, Rachel. You're thinking something's bad's going to happen, but I don't. I think something's good's about to happen for me. And if it happens for me, it's going to happen for you. And I said, I hope so. And so that night when he told me, he said, I told you, Rachel. I told you he had something good for me. Got that job interview, and I'm going to be able to provide for my family. I said, well, I hope so. I hope that goes well. And I went to sleep. Well, I laid there. I had one child on one side, one on the other. About 2 hours later, I got a phone call from his sister that said, Matthew's dead. Oh, I know he's not. I just talked to him. She said, no, he did. He was in a car accident. And I just started screaming. And I was trying to keep it in, not waking up my kids, because what was I supposed to tell them? Parker was 4. Britton had just turned 6. And I ran down the stairs, and my dad was off working in Africa, and I was living with my mom. And I was screaming, he's gone, he's gone. And Mom's like, who? And she thought it was one of my children. And I said, Matthew, he's passed. He's died in a car accident. And I just let it go. I could not believe this was what was really happening. And how was I going to tell my kids? They had just spent the afternoon with him the day before, and he had promised them on Friday. Gaddytown had just opened. He was going to take them to Gaddytown that Friday. It's like, what am I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to tell my children, and I didn't. I stayed the whole day not telling my kids, and they kept coming, what's wrong, Mama? What's wrong, Mama? And I was just waiting for that right time to tell them. And finally, I went back to my parents' bedroom, brought my sisters with me. The pastor was there. But I just took me and my 2 sisters and my 2 children. And I told them that their father had passed in a car accident. And Parker, bless her little heart, she had a thumb in her mouth. She was just sucking her thumb, and she was just looking at me. I don't think they didn't understand. And my son looked at me. He said, he's not sick anymore, is he, Mama? I said, no, he's not sick anymore. She said, he's going to be with Jesus now, right, Mama? And I said, yes. And I felt so confident that, yes, he was with Jesus, because that pastor that was sitting in that living room is the one that led him to Christ. So I knew I could tell him that with certainty. And all Parker wanted to know was if they were still going to go to Gaddytown on Friday. So that I kept them from the wake. I wanted their last memories to be seeing their dad when he took them to McDonald's that Tuesday. I didn't want them to see him like that. I felt like I had to shield them from too much. They could be a part of it a little bit, but not too much. And that night that we had the wake, it happened to be on that Friday. And that's their uncles took them to Gaddytown that night. And we had the funeral the next day. And, I look at it now, the way that I can keep going now in life is hindsight. That God knew that if he had given me all that I had asked for, the house, a baby, whatever it was to fill that void, to make me feel better at that moment, he knew that it was going to be so much harder for me because he knew what was happening up here. So in May, Elizabeth, when he let me have the peace to leave, that not only set the course for what I thought was going to happen, a divorce and protection for my children, but he had my children, and he said, I'm going to let you see your dad now every now and then and get you ready for the rest of this life to be without him. God had it the whole time. And I surrendered that to him. And now I remember what that feels like. And so I always go back, even to this day. My kids are like, so what should I do about this? What should I do about that? You know what? Surrender it. Give it to God. Give it to God. Let's pray about it. Let's trust that peaceful feeling.
Yeah.
And after that, everything that, and I'm not telling anybody that God's going to do exactly what he did for me, for anybody else. But I know he's got everybody else. Their outcomes may look different than mine did. God gave me the house that I had always asked for. God gave me the stability that I always asked for. And there were other things that he gave me that I had asked for. And it is so, you cannot tell me that there is not a God who loves me. And I don't think that God wanted me to go through everything. I don't think. I think that was, I don't know. It was Mary. It was Matthew the one I was supposed to marry. I don't know. But I do know he gave me 2 huge blessings. My children. I got in-laws that are so wonderful. I have brothers and sister-in-law that are still just as close. I go to their family Christmases. We have Thanksgiving with them. You know, we were able to all stay close. But everything I wanted, he did give me. And I'm not saying I don't go through challenges now, but I do know what it feels like to hear that inside of me. To know, yes, this is enough, or no, not yet. You know, I feel like I do.
Looking back, do you think that there were places where your love and commitment to him needed more boundaries?
Gosh, I feel like I don't know if there were quite so many boundaries. It seems like, to me, maybe, I feel like boundaries were things that he placed in our marriage. Like, I'm going to sleep in here instead of a normal marriage of being in there with you. I really don't know about.
What about boundaries to protect where you could have said, this is what I'll accept and this is what I want? Do you look back now and say,
I wish I could.
because I think it sounds to me like you're looking back, honestly, with a lot of grace, more grace for yourself than a lot of other people give themselves, because you knew you had a peace about staying in as long as you were, even if the rest of the world thought it was stupid. And knowing that when you had that sense of peace, you would be ready. So if someone else is in that situation, is the advice to kind of just wait until you feel that gut feeling, whatever it's like for that person, to have the peace of knowing it's time to move forward?
I would say that, but I would also say probably a little bit more bold. Sometimes I feel like maybe I was too soft. Maybe I was in too much of a princess mode, or wanted that night, or, wanting everything to be a certain way. I wish that I had been more bold with Matthew. I wish I would have said, all right, that is enough. He saw me crying. He saw me upset. Did it do anything? No. Did it change what he did? No.
Yeah.
So if there was anything that I would tell, and it's so much easier to say this when I've already been through it, and I can see it hindsight, but if this was my child, I'd say, what does your heart feel? Are you talking with the Lord? Do you feel like you're being led by the Lord? Do you have peace? Because I've talked to others. Do you have the peace yet? No. Okay, you will know. You will know. Because there have been others that are like, that I could relate to where it's about their children. And I can't tell anybody, I guess I could, surrender your children. But that, somebody could have told me that earlier in life, and I still wouldn't have done it. I think it gets to a point to where that's all you can do. And I had to get to a point. I'm so strong-willed that I'm going to stay in it. I don't care. I don't care what anybody else says. I do care. I don't care what anybody else says or who is worried about me. I've got this. I'm going to stay in it. And I'm going to do the best that I can. Yeah, did I do it out of fear? Yes, I did. I did that out of fear for my children. I felt like I needed to be right there with them to make sure. There was no way I could leave them and say, all right, here you go for the weekend. No. I had to be there. I needed to endure that. And so I did until I knew. It's the craziest feeling to know. And I had no fear when I said, this is it. This is enough. I left.
Sense of peace.
It was. And it's indescribable. And you know it.
I know you've talked about, just all the dreams that you had and a God who really knew the desires of your heart. Mm-hmm. You got your house and the things that you had prayed for, and they certainly didn't come the way you expected or on the timing you expected. But what has that been like to look back now and see his hand in those details?
Oh, since then, my oldest is now almost 23. That little 4-year-old is now 21. Lots of life has happened between now and then where I had to rely on the Lord again. I had to rely on my faith. I had to, lots of decisions that I've made. But I always look back at that when I was so down. And I'm going to say it, being the widow is not the hardest part. Going through the before is when I was so low. And being a widow, I've just learned to depend on who it was that got me through that part. Pretty much what it is. You would think that, oh, poor widow, she's all by herself. No, I'm not.
That's when you really realize who was with you, right?
Absolutely. I do have great support, and I do, but it wasn't my parents or his parents that provided that home at that point. He led me to there. There were so many miracles that had to happen for me to get that. Exactly what I wanted. Now, we're this many years past. That house has now been sold to somebody else, living in there, and we're doing other things. But I never feel like now that I lack anything,
And God's even grown your family.
Yeah.
In ways you couldn't have expected.
Yeah. Let's see, 10th grade now. I got my third child that I always wanted. I didn't expect it. She was a little girl, a little kindergartner at the school that I teach at, and she needed a family. And me and my 2 children and my whole family have taken in this little blonde-headed angel. She's 15 now, but she's my third, and it is so. That's another way that I knew that spirit in me that said, go get that, go get her. She needs you.
You learn to trust that voice.
Oh, and so many people were like, Rachel, you're a widow with 2 kids already. I don't care. God put this burn in me. And when I say it burns, it burns. And he says, go do it, go do it. And you cannot ignore that. So, yeah, through all of that, I've learned that voice. And it's led me to where I am now. And I use it every day.
What do you think 2008 Rachel would think about today's Rachel?
Oh, gosh. I think I went from, I guess, really I felt weak, but now I look at how strong I was. But who would have thought all those years later, here I am on the verge of retirement, and I just had started at the beginning of that. I don't know if I would recognize myself now. I feel very independent. I feel that God is their father. That, you know how many times Britton had said when he was growing up, can you get me one of those? We're talking about a dad. And, I've tried here and there. I've had to listen to that voice that says, no, this isn't it. This isn't it. So I'm still on a path, but my path is so much brighter than I ever thought in 2008 where I would be, where my children would be. They're successful. They're adults going through school. And between me and God did that.
Are you proud of yourself?
I am.
Good.
I am proud of myself. And I want to share that. I want to let people know we can get through this. Yes, you can. You can get out and you can get through. And yeah, I'd be proud of myself.
We'll cut it there. Thank you to our sponsor, Porter Law Group, for supporting these conversations. When family is on the line, experience matters. Porter Law Group specializes in custody and family law with compassion at every step. Visit porterlaw.ms now to schedule your consultation to protect what matters most.